Welcome, everybody. It's episode 75 of Topline. It's Sam Jacobs, that's my name. And I'm here with Asad Zaman, the CEO of Sales Talent Agency, the premier go-to-market recruiting firm in North America, and AJ Bruno, the CEO of QuotaPath, the most adaptable commission planning software in the world. And perhaps, is there a new category you'd like us to consider, AJ?
In the universe. I'm not ready to announce it, but my full name is Anthony James Bruno III. So I think I'd like you to refer to me as that going forward.
Okay.
Sam. Okay.
So you're that? You want me to say that? I'll refer to you as that.
The third. 3.
Trey. I'll call you Trey.
Trey. Okay, I'll take it. I like that.
Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
What do the revenue leaders at Google, 3M, IBM, Shopify, Square, and Cisco have in common? Their teams all use SalesLoft to hit their number. SalesLoft is the only platform that's designed for the way revenue teams work every day, so sellers can prioritize and take the right actions to get more deals done, from prospecting and deal management to coaching and forecasting. No more guesswork, no more wasted time on non-selling activities. Follow SalesLoft on LinkedIn to learn more.
75 episodes. That means we've done at least 100 hours of recording. That's wild.
I know.
What can you do in 100 hours? Like, do you like? That's a lot. We could learn another language.
We're only 1% of the way to 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
So we've got a long way to go.
If you're out there and you've built a business, a successful business because of Topline, please get in touch with us. We'd love to promote you.
Somebody
you followed our tactics. You're like, I know everything there is about SaaS and B2B, Asset Stats,
Founder
market. Mode. I bought Snowflake when he told me to buy Snowflake.
I've never said buy Snowflake.
That should be a segment on how we should invest.
I said buy Mongo, and then Mongo went up.
Oh,
this feels like attribution bias. There was one time I said a thing and it turned out to be correct. Ergo, I'm always right.
That's a story of my life.
Yeah. You know what we didn't buy last week, Sam? We didn't buy Airbnb. No one bought Airbnb last week.
Thank God. What a piece of poop.
I had so many people reach out to me that were just so excited about your story. Actually, a couple of people were like, "Hey, thanks for pitching or plugging Wonder," by the way, which I did do.
You did do it. Is that a stage? You said Liz Christo told you about it, right? But does that mean they invested in it or no?
I don't think so. Kyle Norton is an advisor, though.
Oh, that's cool.
That was he reached out to me about it, but
Kyle's coming on the show, isn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to ask the person that's in charge of guests whether he is or not.
Am I in charge of guests or are you in charge of guests?
I am in charge of guests. He is. Kyle will be on when I will not be on. I will be on a 15-year wedding anniversary, way overdue. This is the 3rd year in a row that I am missing the day of my wedding anniversary for a work event. I'll be in Miami for a work conference. But
is it RoofCon?
RoofCon? You gotta say it like that. RoofCon. RoofCon. my team told me to say it. It has to be like that every time you say it. No, this is for some other conference. I can't remember. I don't know. I've got so much travel coming up. Guys, we got a full docket. We're gonna go.
Have we? Full docket.
No, we don't.
I'm being generous with the word full there.
No. We're excited about this because we're going to go deeper into some of these topics, though. So, we got a lot of good feedback from our founder. We could talk about founder mode again, but we got a lot of good feedback from founder mode and talking about it. So we don't have a full docket, but
we have a great docket.
Don't tell people we don't have a full docket.
But it's great.
They'll think we're not professional.
It is great. Whether it's full or not, it's fantastic. Actually, what's really interesting is we've never ever gone through the entire docket. Somebody was asking me, Asha was asking me, he's like, how do you do it? And I was like, we've literally never covered every topic. So it's actually good that it's not full.
The reason, and I know why, the text that Asher sent a text, and then Asad sent like 15 texts back on how to exactly do it. He
asked for advice. He's like, how do you advise on the podcast? When somebody asks you that question, they want proper advice. They don't want one line from you.
Do you know what my advice was to Asher, Sam?
What?
Ask Asad.
What is he starting a podcast?
They have one, and Unlearn, which I like the name, but they are making it more focused and wanting to put more effort into it. Okay. So they're thinking about how do we do that.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh yeah, let's jump into our full docket.
Fine. Who cares?
Sam, you took a nap today. You should not be grumpy.
Tell people that.
Your secret? This is the whole point of this podcast. We tell secrets to success. The secret to B2B SaaS is your CEO is taking a nap right now.
I had a 20-minute window, and I was going to go for a walk, and I said, I feel tired. And I went down and lied on the couch, and it was the most refreshing thing that I had done. And I feel great now. And like just a strategy, putting it out into the universe. What if every time we felt tired, we just went to bed?
What if?
You're in the middle of a conversation. You're like, excuse me.
Anybody that has children will say, what are you talking about? This says a man without children.
Okay, let's do this. The first thing we want to talk about is this idea of there are two ways to win. And so here's the background. One of the themes we've been talking about over and over again is the implications of the fact that the supply of tech companies is increasing at 7% per quarter in this ecosystem. And so categories are more competitive than they've ever really been, and they're only getting more competitive every quarter. And the results are a noisier world where it's harder to break through from a go-to-market perspective. And we can see the impact of that in the results of the various channels we've spoken about, from outbound to open rates to click-through rates to lead cost, etc. So in thinking about this, it got me to think that there are really two ways to win in a competitive world. One is product velocity and the other is go-to-market excellence. And both have tons of issues. So with product velocity, what you're saying is building things is getting easier and easier, especially because of AI. So we will be able to increase the pace of adding new amazing features for our customer. And that's going to give us these competitive advantages. We keep adding to it. The problem is things are easier to build. And so somebody else can do the same thing. And we've seen this we were chatting about call transcription technology, AI-driven call transcription. I don't know if that's the category name, but it's so powerful. But in 12 months, it's become commoditized and it's wild. And so the other part of that that's really hard is that as you get bigger, maintaining product velocity is harder because every additional engineer or product person, the impact is less than the previous one. And we've seen this play out at really great companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google. So if they've had to deal with this, it's probably going to happen to everyone. So that doesn't seem sustainable. And is very difficult to execute. The other is go-to-market excellence. And in categories with similar products, we have seen that the company with the best sales team wins. App Dynamics is a good example of this. They were in a category with two other competitors that had very similar products, but they'd built one of the best sales teams ever known to tech, and they won that category and had a multi-billion-dollar exit to Cisco because of that. But that's also difficult because it means hiring really good people and enabling them and retaining them, and that's tough to master as you scale. So general thoughts on this framing, Sam, when you hear that framing, does this framing make sense? Is that the choice? Your general thoughts when you hear this?
A couple of thoughts. The first, I think, is one of the things that there's another vector. I mean, what we're talking about are moats, what are sustainable competitive advantages? And I think another one is a network effect business where the velocity that you gain from adding new customers somehow helps improve the product. You could say in some ways that all businesses have some level of network effect because of the more customer feedback you get, but Google's a good example because the more people that use Google, the more they could train their models, the more and better suggestions they can make, the better the search results would be. And so once you have a lead, you can increase the lead by having this kind of network effect or virality built into it. Marketplaces have network effects where if you're a supplier, you want to go where all the buyers are. And if you're a buyer, you want to go where all the suppliers are, which is to the point why there's an argument that you can increase your customer acquisition cost threshold or allowability in the short term in order to gain market share, because you believe on the other side of that market share game, there's an opportunity to increase your lead and to where market share itself drives some level of competitive advantage. I think when I see some of these sales and marketing technology companies, and we were talking about it offline, we were comparing, product velocity, go-to-market excellence. Product velocity seems particularly difficult because there's always some kind of, now when you see it happening, it is really impressive. And, one of the examples I was sharing was, when we were talking about meeting transcription in this company that I've been advising, this company Otter, where, one would assume when you're using Zoom that, meeting recording and AI summaries of the meeting are commoditized, and that there's not really a difference. In the same way that you might even assume that video conferencing was a commodity before you even use Zoom. And then when you compare the results of meeting transcription to what Otter is doing, now I don't use the other one's Fathom's another one, and there's a bunch of different companies that do this, but I was sort of blown away over the last couple of weeks because I could send my Otter pilot into a meeting that I didn't attend, and it could transcribe the meeting on my behalf and then send me a summary that's perfectly synthesized. It has these little prompts at the beginning of a Zoom where it tells you like, hey, this is what's happening in the meeting. And then as it approaches the end of the calendar invite, it says, by the way, here's the key takeaways from the meeting and here's the action items, and click here to see the full transcription. And all of this is to say that felt like a product, like a strategy that was specifically focused on like, hey, if I can focus on this one thing and I can just keep building and iterating a better and better and better product, then maybe that can be a differentiator. And maybe over time you get exactly what I'm doing, which is basically net promoters. You get people talking about the difference between a commoditized feature of a broad product and a highly specialized distinguishing feature of a company that's just completely focused on that category. The problem with that in the long term is just that it just feels hard to sustain, and where it relates to is it relates to companies raising money. It relates to this whole question that we continue to talk about every single week, which is what's the future of the venture capital industry? Because it's not that any of these tools aren't interesting or valuable or worthwhile. They definitely are. It's, can any of these tools truly achieve $1 billion outcome? Can they easily find a path to $150 to $200 million? And we've talked about this a lot. And the path to $200 million definitely seems to be multi-product. You have to become a platform. It may also include different geographies. So maybe this is the tip of the spear, and all of these different companies that are just iterating on one specific piece of product functionality feel like their path is by continuing to just build really quickly. But again, as building things in general becomes easier and easier and cheaper, I worry about the sustainability of that, particularly relative to like venture valuations. So, and then on the other hand, as you were talking about, Asad, I think you're right that go-to-market excellence, and not even go-to-market excellence, but partially it's excellence, but it is also novel and interesting ways to get to market in a way that produces some kind of sustainable advantage. And I was at this dinner the other night that we've been talking about that Alina hosted, and one of the co-founders of Apollo was there. And so this is an example of what I'm talking about, which is Apollo originally had a 10K ACV and had an SDR and outbound sales team. And they just could not make the math of their business work at that price point. And so they reverse engineered. And what I really appreciate about what the guy said is he said, like, listen, we just couldn't make that business work. It had to be PLG. And so in order for it to be PLG, it had to be much, much cheaper. And so what I appreciate about that approach is they reverse engineered what the market needed, because the market wasn't willing to, basically the market couldn't support a $10,000 price point with an SDR, an account executive, and traditional outbound win rates as outbound itself was declining. And so what Apollo said was, we're just going to make it $1,000 a year, and we're going to force ourselves to build something where you have to sign up online and you have to start using it online. And then They created, I believe, both. I don't know if it was personal contact pages, but they definitely created company contact pages that SEO'd incredibly well, that were powered by Apollo. That when you Googled a certain kind of company and you were looking for their contact information, the Apollo page in particular SEO'd very, very well, which is a tried and true strategy link. That was originally LinkedIn strategy.
Yeah. And that was Jigsaw strategy, like back in 2005.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like, if you're trying to, anyway, so like that is definitely, and my point is like, that's not just go-to-market excellence, that's go-to-market innovation in a way of saying like, the product is data about people. And as Mark Cosoglo said last week on Topline, personal contact information at this point is a commodity. So it's not that I haven't used the Apollo product, to be completely honest, but
we're customers. I can talk
about it too.
So I think that's really interesting. And if you can build that virality, that customer virality in through some kind of PLG motion, then maybe that's defensible. The problem with all of this stuff is are any of these companies truly multi-billion-dollar companies? Meaning at 5 to 6 times ARR, are they truly $300 to $400 million revenue opportunities? Maybe they are. I think Apollo is approaching $100 million.
Apollo's raised. I mean, they raised last year. I think it was $50 million from Sequoia. They're a sister portfolio company of ours, and I actually know the story well. What you said that is actually kind of interesting is that they mix two pieces to this. They mixed a product distribution aspect and a tried and true product velocity and a tried and true distribution method. PLG with the SEO format. I mean, Zapier did what you just described, but did it with a totally different market, a different outcome. So they took something that was pretty interesting. But your point around like $1 billion outcomes is really interesting in the sense that, like, okay, take Zapier. I don't know if it was $1 billion outcome, and it's probably still growing. It's not a public company, right? Zapier is not a public company.
Zapier,
fact checked here. But like the genesis of Zapier was like, if you were saying, I want NetSuite and Salesforce connected, like they created landing pages, and then they figured out from a demand standpoint which were the ones where people landed, and they just crushed the SEO game from that. That's really well known. But the product velocity aspect of it, which is, I think you can get to some level of scale, but what we're seeing and what I actually am curious to see what happens with Apollo is you're going to hit some level of TAM, especially your B2B sales tech. Apollo's just recently released their own conversational intelligence and their own sales engagement tools. And so now, like when we did a competitive review, it's like, okay, Gong, SalesLoft, Outreach, and now Apollo.
Info, 6 Sense.
Yeah. And so it's like, well, we're going to still be Apollo customers on the data side because of the commodity piece, but like we have better options on all of these other things. And there's not, I'm not saying this because I saw their product firsthand, but I'm saying that there's very little room for differentiation above and beyond what we're doing. Yeah. And that $1 billion outcome on the VC side is just a really interesting point that I'm really curious as to what those conversations look like at the investment table. Like, what does the IC look like? The investment committee bringing this to the table, these conversations on defensibility.
The Apollo one must have been some calculation around there will be consolidation in this space. So even if we get to some decent scale, there might not be enough space for multiple multi-billion-dollar businesses, but will there be one real big business and a second, second place? Yes. And maybe a couple of them get acquired. So you might not lose your money, but maybe Apollo can be the big company because ZoomInfo is struggling. And I think that was like an interesting bet. I think Andreessen did it, right? It was an interesting bet in their product. We used ZoomInfo and then we got Apollo and we tested them side by side. And the team liked Apollo by a factor of like 5x. Like we just...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
On the data side, but not for some of the other tools, for the other...
We don't do automation, etc. So we just wanted like contact information. So we would cold call candidates once in a while. And it was really good. It was easy to use. We didn't have to do a lot of training and onboarding. People figured out how to use it well, and the data was good. And we had ZoomInfo for a while, and we just didn't need it anymore. One of the challenges that seems to be playing out is that all these companies that are building for RevOps, I think, RevOps is not as common as I think people think it is.
Yeah.
So here's my point on this. I would love your take on this, AJ, because I think RevOps for what you guys have currently built is your hero, right? When I look at my client base, I look at publicly traded companies, they have RevOps. I look at venture funded businesses, they across various various stages in their life cycle have RevOps. Even at the Series A stage, they're working with a consultant if they haven't built it out internally. When I look at my PE clients in tech, even at 30 to 50 million in ARR, they don't have RevOps. One of the CEOs I spoke to last week was joking. He's like, and we're not going to have any of these RevOps type of things. And this is a $50 million ARR company. Growing well, doing well. They're like, we have a BizOps person that the CRO can use. And then none of my non-tech clients have it unless they're really large companies like Honeywell. So I think that all of these companies that are building for RevOps, it's actually a very constrained TAM. When you hear that, what do you think? Am I right in thinking this way? What's the flaw in my thought process?
No, you're right in the sense that revenue operations is our hero. And the bet that we're making, and I think a lot of companies have made in like 2014, they said, okay, the rise of revenue operations, we're going to make this a central figure and a hero in our journey, is that we need to educate and teach the market of what this role actually does. And I think that has actually been problematic, because if I say revenue operations, Sam, RevOps, what's a RevOps leader do?
I think that every time somebody says RevOps, the first thing
I love it. I love that even we have these questions, because this is a question that's in everyone's mind. It's like, what is this? Like,
first of all, like, we shifted. I was thinking about this because I was actually looking at. I got an email from Outreach today saying like they got some award, and but they've changed the category again. I think they called it an orchestration platform, because they tried to create
revenue orchestration,
sales engagement as a category.
Yeah.
My point is, like, we call it RevOps. I don't know what do large enterprises call it RevOps? Do they call it sales ops? Everybody in
operations,
VC-backed B2B land has moved to revenue and GTM, but that doesn't mean that's not everybody at all. That's like 10% of the economy, 5% of the economy. Like 95% of people probably still don't even call it RevOps if they call it anything. And then to the point, AJ, that you just said, what do I think it is? Well, you're on the podcast, so I'll say commission planning. I think it's dashboards and forecasting, right? Like, I think it's like who owns.
I think forecasting. I think I think of the plumbing and anything that connects to your CRM or your ERP. Like, you're the gatekeeper and like the keeper, not gatekeeper. You're the keeper of that running efficiently and smoothly.
Like you're the keeper of the data and the processes that connect your team to the data to make them more effective. Maybe that's it.
Here's my challenge. When I hear people say it's going to be the most important function in sales, I think they don't know what they're talking about. It's a support function. Like we sometimes want to give everybody a participation medal for being part of go-to-market. Like there's support functions, there's the main function. The salesperson is the main person. Here's a litmus test for it. When I take that function out, does sales still happen? So if I take RevOps out of a business, the business can still sell. If I take salespeople out of the business and leave RevOps, what's going to happen? A bunch of like emails are going to go out to a bunch of lists, and no one's going to really respond to them, and nothing's really going to happen. The company's going to miss its target and go down. I think RevOps is very much a support function. When built properly with the right people, it can be a real force multiplier. But it is a support function.
Here's my counter argument, though, to you. My RevOps leader is up for CRO of the year for Pavilion right now.
You need to give him a new title then.
He's not a real. That's all rigged, these GTM awards. You spend a lot of money with us. They all know you're friends with me.
I'll see you for the award. I'll see you in Austin when you're promoting. Everyone come to the award ceremony. Everyone come to the award ceremony.
Objective in all of startup land.
I think Sam has gotten a lot of people new titles with that list. So Milligan should get a new title because he's obviously not a RevOps person. He's your GTM leader.
No, but Ann Bao is also on this list too. She's I will be speaking with her next week, and she is a fantastic RevOps leader. I think the same conversation we've had about CMOs being CRO leaders, it's creeping into RevOps leaders being sales leaders and CROs too.
But let's be honest though, there's customer success, there's sales, there's marketing. They have C-levels on top of them. What's the chief RevOps lead? Like there's no chief of RevOps. There's a head of RevOps and a VP of RevOps. But all of this is a support function that sits within go-to-market that reports to the ultimate go-to-market leader. This is not a thing of its own now. Like now go-to-market will be 5 new things. No, I actually think that as this function is evolving, and I have seen when it's built well, it can be amazing for companies. But I think people aren't talking about how a lot of the problems in go-to-market are because RevOps is buying all these things and pushing all these strategies and initiatives, all of these automation technologies that are now being built for RevOps, and RevOps buys them, implements them. Who's to blame for all this extra automation? Isn't that RevOps? Isn't the RevOps team the gatekeeper of how we go to market?
Well, to blame? I don't know if they're the blame. I think they're the ones that are actually on the other side of it and actually looking for less. The best RevOps leaders that I know simplify the world. They don't make it harder by pulling more things into their world. And that's probably the answer. I asked Sam the question because one, everyone wants to be a thought leader. How many revenue operations specific communities are there out in the world? There's a lot. Everyone wants to own the definition. They want to own the category of this thing. And by doing so, they're like, hey, this is my way. And there's just so much noise out there. At the simplest core, I actually go the other way. They make it, you have at the very beginning of it, a opportunity is born. What's the quickest way to get it to close one? That's RevOps figuring that out, that entire process. And you're skeptical, Asid, but the best RevOps leaders that I know own training and enablement sits underneath them. They own that process end to end, and they fully are accountable to that process. Now, the CRO is accountable to revenue, but the revenue operations, including sales ops, including marketing ops, stand on their own as an objective viewer of everything going on, and they keep all the other parts of the organization honest by being able to separate church and state and make it as smooth as possible for the close.
And then they go and buy some extra automation tools just to superpower our sales team.
Why are you hating on RevOps?
I don't know. I'm feeling like it's a function that everybody has glorified a lot, and I am yet to see its true ROI at scale.
I'm going to find the director of revenue operations at Coca-Cola right now.
Well, let me just take the opposite side here. I don't think it's them buying a bunch of tools. I think that the act of doing, but again, let me say this, and it can be a straw man. The act of going to market requires technology and automation more than it ever has in the past. And it will only increase as AI agents replace, as Zapier becomes an interactive chat, but that automatically connects things by just you asking it to. And all of this technology will have to interact with each other in a coherent and clean way. And the logical person that's most likely to understand how all of that fits together is the RevOps person, not necessarily the account executive. And I also think that it makes sense that, despite the fact that Milligan hasn't got that title yet, but that the path to CRO goes through RevOps for exactly that reason, which is that being operationally minded is the way to generate predictable revenue, and predictable revenue seems to come from some operational discipline as opposed to somebody that's just really, really good at hiring and training potentially, although AJ just said that training's part of the RevOps organization. I don't know.
That was a hot take, but Sam, you absolutely just nailed it. What is every revenue organization in the world looking for right now?
They're looking for predictable revenue.
Predictable revenue. And if Sam is saying, I'm making Sam's the hero in this story. Sam just said that's what revenue operations is not just in support of, but driving. Then that is why the world has shifted. And that's why revenue operations has become a central figure. Maybe unfounded though. Maybe it's a market change that's happened, that people are looking for new distribution model. And so we've we've tapped out on sales. We've talked about ecosystem-led growth and partnerships, and we talked about PLG. We talked about distribution. We talked about marketplace. Talked about all of these things, but like maybe it's just looking at revenue operations as another way to create efficient,
I think
profitable and efficient growth. Sorry, Peg.
Peg, and he throws it down, and it's good.
And then he
And
throws
where
it
I'm
down.
going, where I'm thinking as we talk is like, what we really all want is process-oriented, technically minded people. And I think like the problem with elevating decent commercial executives into leadership positions is that they're not process oriented. They don't really understand. Oftentimes the top performing salesperson is the person that's least likely to update Salesforce and the person least likely to use the CRM in the proper way. And they just happen to be really good at having really interesting conversations. They know the product okay, not great. And they're somewhat persuasive. And that path to leadership is deeply, deeply problematic because when they get into leadership positions, they can't describe to you why anything happened. The only interesting insight they have is, well, if we had more leads, and they don't know how to analyze their stages. They aren't aware that, half of their opportunities haven't been touched in 90 days and are sitting in some BS stage, so that you're constantly overrepresenting your pipeline internally to the organization. So the point is, as you become more elevated, who are the people most likely to understand how the business works so that they can describe it from a coherent perspective? And it's not that it's impossible for somebody that's carried a bag. Kyle Coleman was an SDR and he moved his way up and now he's CMO and he's fantastic. But it just seems like the place that people are the technical orientation of here's how all these pieces fit together. And as a consequence, let me tell you what's going to happen over the next couple of months is going to come from somebody that has a finance background or some kind of operational background, somebody that likes putting machines together, which is going to tend to be somebody that's operational, somebody that maybe was originally a Salesforce admin and then learn how to think about the business in a coherent way. And I'm saying this from deep personal experience, the talented commercial executives that are really, really good sellers that have been elevated to VP levels or CRO levels, there's just this gap when you talk to them and you realize you get to a point sometimes when you're interacting with a certain kind of commercial executive when you think to yourself, I don't know if this person knows anything at all.
I think that's on the spectrum of a really bad one. It's somewhere there. But I worry if that ends up happening, because here's something I've seen. I've seen some of the best consultants from our RevOps consulting firms go into the revenue leadership roles and fall flat on their faces. I think I would worry if a company had a CRO who came from a RevOps function. I'm not saying it wouldn't work, because obviously with Ryan Milligan, it's working. I just don't think it's the more probable path to success. I think great commercial leaders are supposed to be few and far between. I think where they should come from is sales. I think they should maybe do stints in other places to get some context. We had management training programs for a reason back in the day. So maybe they do stints in other places. But I think unless a person knows how to sell, understands that, and then has the ability to be analytical and thoughtful, etc. We've obviously got tons of examples of those, right? We have tons of examples of people that were amazing sellers that became amazing CROs. We talked about friend Kyle Norton here, Josh Gutman. You spoke about Kyle Coleman. There are a lot of people that were amazing ICs that then had everything else. It's just that this ecosystem is so large and these companies are growing. There's so many of these companies, so many people have to get promoted into these roles that we see a lot of the wrong people in the wrong seats, and then we think this has to do with a path. I think that's the best path for it. And RevOps as a support function where it supports a go-to-market leader. I think RevOps, the ethos of the sales team should come from the CRO, and the keeper of that ethos should be the RevOps function. So they support this person in enabling the way that we want to go to market, which means we need to understand what's working. So the machinery of it, we need to try experiments to make things a little bit better. We need to buy the right technology, etc. I think if it is designed and looked at as a support function, that's when it's most powerful. Unfortunately, and I think a lot of these niche communities are not helping, where what ends up happening is the niche community says you should be at the C level. I'm sorry, like a solutions architect doesn't need to have a C-level title that sits at the board. Like, no, like these are like, that's where I think a lot of the problems happen, because now you have RevOps people being like, I should have a seat at the table. I'm sorry, you shouldn't.
I'm sorry
You're in the wrong
for
role
all
if you
the
want a seat at that table.
I'm sorry for all the solution architects out there that Asad just offended with his comment. If you're a chief solutions architect out there, don't worry, you're seated safe.
Come on, like that's
I'm just
C-level.
Wait, hold on. I was a joke. I got three things. One, Ali B. Ali B is the VP, Vice President of Operations and Strategy and Revenue Operations at Coca-Cola. I won't give his full last name because I don't want to dox him. So Ali B. Thank you, Ali.
Dox.
Two.
You found it on LinkedIn. You found
This is a Coca-Cola executive.
We're not sending the FBI to his house.
This isn't like some anonymous Twitter handle.
Yeah, all right. Don't let us know. You found it on LinkedIn, but we don't know how to use LinkedIn.
Two, I think all of the revenue operations leader, they know where the skeletons are buried. Like, think about if a revenue operations leader, they're a part of a company that acquires 3 companies, and then they put together 3 Salesforce instances, and they do that. They take that from end to end. They do it successfully. What is the PE or whomever bought them going to do? They're going to take that person and say, go do this thing somewhere else. That is like one of the most important things you could possibly do or know at a business. I think they just are the keepers of that.
Yeah,
3,
they're the keepers of that.
You said something, Austin, that really caught my attention. Actually, it might have been Sam, but one of you two said something,
Probably
and just this evolution of it, which is the best commercial leaders that I know, that I've been mentored was, they're one of their best kept secrets were when they got hired, they had a sales ops. This was sales ops before prior that came with them. Yeah. And I think that's what you're seeing today at the executive level. Revenue operations is another level up. And I think it hits strategy. Sales ops was just always to me, because this is me speaking, because I'm a dumb sales leader and I don't know numbers. So like I need a sales ops leader. So now I'm a dumb CEO and I need an operational minded person. RevOps is the keeper of that. There are 3 people on my management team that have taken on revenue operations roles management in different companies. Graham, Cole, and Ryan. All 3 of them. And Wyndham, our chief product officer, revenue operations. He started today. He was listening to last week's episode when we got the
I think that's actually a really important thing. You probably should spend some time there. Like, this is part of your education. DNA. But it is like, so we place a lot of these roles. I'm just like shit talking all the roles we place. We place a lot of these leaders, and when we meet the best ones, they are true force multipliers. I just feel like when we are at the early days of this function becoming mainstream, a lot of things have to be figured out, including what are the responsibilities and not, what is fair to trust them with and what's not. And how should you look at this function? I think if you look at support functions as non-support functions and become the main characters, like, it's a problem. I think that's where things become problematic. If you want to be the main one, go become a CRO. If you want to be the main person, like, go be a CMO. Like, that's the main people. There are 3 of them. There's CCO, CMO, CRO. And I think in each of those roles, a practitioner has to go into that position, because I think it's really hard to build a go-to-market team if you've never sold anything.
Well, you can change that. So if you're out there, you're a revenue operations leader, and you're like, this what Asad is spitting down, putting down, whatever. No, not for me. Go sell some deals, and then just like light up his LinkedIn.
If you can sell some
docs
deals,
him.
you're
how you use it.
Okay, now a word from our sponsors.
Are you coming to GTM 2024 in Austin, Texas, October 14 through 16? I look forward to seeing you there. By the way, I'm Steph Reck, Global On the Bench Facilitator for Pavilion. And at GTM 24, I'll be moderating 2 sessions. One is a panel session with community leaders, a professional coach and negotiator, and a global revenue team leader. We're going to be diving into why networking before, during, and after your job search is invaluable. The second session will be with Gary Service from Insight Partners on reinventing yourself in the age of AI. Whether you're looking to position yourself for your next role or considering a more appropriate career path to reach your goals, these sessions will equip you with the strategies to excel. So don't wait. Secure your ticket before they sell out at joinpavilion.com/GTM2024. And as a thank you for being a Topline listener, you're going to receive an extra 15% off your ticket with the code TOPLINE.
And we're back. We paid some bills. Now let's talk about building in public. So I'm really interested in this idea of building in public because we have two prominent people in our ecosystem that are doing this. One is obviously Adam Robinson. And I've said that I find some of Adam's stuff tacky, but he's an undeniable business person, undeniable and brave. Like publishing some of the stuff he publishes, you got to have a lot of guts and a really strong character to be able to do it. Publishing when your company is doing well is easy. Publishing when your company is flat or declining in certain areas is really, really tough. And he made a post over the weekend where he shared that they had 14% month-over-month churn for their new product. And it takes a lot of bravery to publish that. Now, obviously, some people that want to take the other side will be like, well, his ICP are these smaller companies, and to them, retention.com is the thing they want to become. So even when he shows these things, it's still very impressive to his ICP. Whereas to somebody, if your ICP was different, they might look at that differently. Fair, maybe not. Then you've got, but the one thing that he's always had is that he has no board. It's a bootstrap business. So he doesn't have anyone to question his moves. And so then the question became, can somebody do this if you're venture funded? And you've got Howard Lerman. Is that how you say his last name, Sam?
Yeah, Lerman.
He's the Yext co-founder at CEO and now the CEO and co-founder of Roam. And he's been publishing their monthly performance, user numbers, usage, churn, growth, etc., publicly. And for a venture funded business, you can connect some dots. Like they have 1.4 million in ARR right now. They raised their Series A in late 2022. It was $100 and something million post, which meant that it would have been a couple of 100x multiple. Like you can connect those dots, but he's putting this out there. And so this is, Sam, you're the most public facing out of us. When you think of this, when you look at these people building in public, you've probably analyzed it and thought about it. What's the calculus? When should somebody do it? When should somebody not do it? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are your thoughts?
Adam starts, because I just spent some time with him. By the way, he wants to do a boat day in Austin. On Lake Travis or Lake Austin.
Is this why we jump out of airplanes? Do we have to land on the boat?
Different. We're going to jump out of airplanes on a different day.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, maybe I need to move my flight so we can do it that Friday. I have a lot of wide-ranging thoughts, but it comes down to the following themes. One of them is, how do you get somebody's attention in the modern world? Which we talked about GTM excellence or GTM innovation as one possible competitive advantage that creates a moat. If you look at how the world is interacting, I think Adam fundamentally believes that compelling storytellers are a key differentiator for a company. Now, you can say, that you asked the question, Asad, if I'm a founder, if I'm somebody, do I aspire to be an influencer? And the answer is, well, lots of people aspire to be Adam Robinson, but there's only him.
Yeah.
Because he is good at it. And so the skills necessary to be a modern CEO have skewed even more heavily to being a modern, authentic storyteller using both text and video as your compelling mediums. And that doesn't play to everybody's strengths. What that means is that Adam's, by the way, Adam doesn't start with, I'm building our B2B, let me find a way to promote it. That's just so you understand the calculus. That is not the calculus. The calculus is, this is the future. Influencer brands that create businesses underneath them are the future in a way that's very similar to Sam Parr or Sean Puri or any of these guys, right? Sam Parr's whole thing
We've
is like,
spoken about it, how distribution gets harder and building becomes easier. So how do you
right,
take
exactly. So like I'll create Hampton, he'll probably create 4 other companies, and some of them will be good. And by the way, in a manner not dissimilar from our B2B, you know, I hear that Hampton's churn is not good. You know, but that doesn't matter to Sam if he doesn't raise too much money. But my point, the fundamental point is that storytelling as an art form and storytelling as a discipline becomes more and more important in the modern world. So that, now, again, you may not be good at it, but and that's fair. And that's not the only way to get somebody's attention or to create a brand. But when I look at what's happening in the world, I tend to agree with Adam that the future is skewing even more heavily to compelling storytellers in the formats that are most prevalent. And right now, you know, it's short form video, like TikTok style videos and different kinds of those videos that LinkedIn, by the way. So Alina, did this, had a camera person follow her around last week when we were at SaaS Open. Vin, exactly. That
kid went viral many years ago because he posted a picture with Gary Vaynerchuk. That was his first viral moment. I remember that kid.
That video in the last couple of days has gotten 1 million impressions on LinkedIn. And what do you see in that video? You see Alina feeding her kids in a t-shirt, putting on her makeup, in an Uber talking about Romania and communism. Yes, there are some glamour moments where, you know, we're at the dinner with a bunch of cool people. But my point is, you know, the fundamental calculus is if you're good at that, if you're willing to do it, deeper and deeper authenticity and more compelling kinds of content creation, I think is one of the paths to GTM innovation, is one of the paths that can create some differentiation. And, you know, frankly, you see me, I'm still on my crappy microphone. I still haven't invested in like the video studio in my apartment because I'm never sure where I'm going to be living. But I think I'm missing out on not investing in more video. And then the other thing is, you know, I have some personal stuff happening in my life that I'm actually not so sure. I don't want. Listen, I'm happy for you to know who my dogs are because they're wonderful guys. But I don't know that I need to tell you every single thing that's happening in my life. And that's probably a barrier. You know, that's probably a gap that will prevent Pavilion, because there's ways I can go much bigger on Pavilion. I could try to become some kind of TikTok, YouTube influencer. I could really invest. And in fact, it is a bit strange, and because we pay some of the people that help me on the social media stuff, we pay them as contractors, and we don't really evaluate it as a channel to invest in, even though it's clearly the most performing channel in all of Pavilion. But there's definitely an argument to like, dude, you should have a videographer capturing every single thing that you do. Like I was at the SaaS Open thing, and Adam's sitting in the corner opining to the camera guy that he brought with him. And I feel like sometimes that's keeping Pavilion from even greater heights, is the hesitancy to invest more aggressively in content creation. And yeah, there's a little bit of self-consciousness because I don't know, I just don't.
That's the thing. Yeah.
There's some level of privacy that, you know, I don't need everybody to know exactly where I'm living and what's happening in my personal life, and people can infer it anyway, you know? And but I think the people that win are the most willing to like lean into that and embrace it and embrace the vulnerability and talk about who they are. And I do think that's the future. I think because as we were talking about, the reason it correlates for me to the first topic we were talking about, which is, you know, competitive advantages. What is the path? How do you get somebody's attention in 2024? And I don't think there's a formula. The formula is, you know, maybe shoot a sex tape. I don't know. You know, look at Kim Kardashian. I'm referencing Kim Kardashian because she leveraged distinctive video content creation, which was her sex tape, with, you know, to propel her to a multi-billion-dollar brand. But it just seems to me like the hardest thing to do is to capture somebody's attention, and maybe that's where you know, maybe authentic, compelling stories are the ways to lean into that most heavily. I don't know.
Maybe,
AJ.
Maybe. I I got to hire this guy, Vin, so he can watch me beat my kids in Mario Party. And my wife beat me in cornhole. She's like, we have this scoreboard. She's up 9 games to 1 right now this summer in cornhole. Austin's like, what is cornhole? He has no idea what cornhole is. This is an American pastime down here. You
don't know what cornhole is, Austin?
No,
that's wild.
What is
Austin
this?
just lives a different, better life than I don't know that knowing cornhole makes you. I think it's worse. The people that are great at cornhole, I don't know. Except for Matt Fenwick. I love you, buddy. And he's one of the great cornhole players of our day.
One of the great cornhole players of our day.
Austin is so confused right now. He's like, I don't even know what to say. I'm not even going to Google cornhole. I don't even want to Google it. It's a great game. It's a fantastic game. So you mentioned Sam Parr, and we don't talk about Adam. Both those are 2 points. And my old CEO used to say, 2 points make a line. And the thing that is like common denominator in both of those is churn. And I'm curious if this like influencer-led distribution model is directly correlated to churn, because when it comes down to it, is the product actually sustainable? And
that's such an interesting point, AJ.
And that's really the scalability of what SaaS, like that's where my perspective of a SaaS business of like, yeah, I've dabbled in it in some ways, but I've never gone all in on LinkedIn. And anyway, this is like the closest I have. And this is just for fun. Like, this is, we do this, but I also am just learning. I'm just genuinely curious. That's why I do Topline. I love talking to you guys every single week. But like, I don't know if Adam really loves doing the thing. Maybe he does, but even if he does love it, the other side of it is like, to what end? It's not 14% month over month is not sustainable. We all know
that's his product problem, right? Like, so the idea of this, I do think this trend is real, which is that, and I want to be part of this trend because I'm falling in love with media slowly and steadily in doing this. And I have this weirdness of, I like falling in love with really difficult businesses, first recruitment and now this, but I do believe in the trend that distribution becomes harder and building things becomes easier. And if you can have great distribution, well, now it's about building things and pushing them out to that audience. And some of them will work well and some won't. Remember, there are a lot of people that did sneakers and then Dre did Beats. Right? Like he killed it with Beats, and then a bunch of people started doing headphones. And then there's a Logan Paul guy came up with a drink.
The product was already there. Like Dre came in after the product had already been built. Like I think he was an investor, but they also just ultimately gave him equity for being the sponsor. He had nothing to do with the product.
It was Beats by Dre. They came up with the whole thing. There's a great documentary on it.
I feel like every Topline episode is like just calling out AJ where he's just dead wrong.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's saying you're dead wrong. I think you're right. I think the magic is, what if you had both?
Yeah,
like,
what if you have Chili Piper? You're trying to find that both, right? So when you find that both, you can see what it leads to. It leads to huge outcomes.
That would be an argument. That would be a bullish argument for Chili Piper, which is she comes from a product background. It's a product before anybody knew who she was, and it was a product that worked. And then you layer on her growing influencer status, and because she's hyper competitive, she gets good at it quickly. And all of a sudden, that's like a compelling argument. I agree with you, AJ, that hype is great for acquisition. It's not great for retention.
Yeah.
But if you have a great product and you have acquisition, I mean, having great acquisition and terrible retention, by the way, that just means don't raise venture. Doesn't, Adam's point is like, I don't know what kind of business this is, but I'm going to pay myself a couple $1 million a year indefinitely. Yeah. Like, that sounds pretty good.
Venture, on the other side of it, venture actually can be really helpful if used correctly in this way of like, you have a board, you have governance, you have operators at that level that are like, these are the problems that they're actually pretty well suited to solve and help you solve along the way if you choose the right venture partner. I've talked at length at how much I love working with Insight. Truly love working with Insight. Pablo does this on a weekly basis. JR, early stage. The early stage are like the come dream with me, and he is going to be my ride or die investor and like, look, I'm going to figure this out, help you figure this out, and really wants to be supportive. Sometimes it's a lot because that's what boards are. And a lot of times it's actually really helpful. So I don't know. remains to be seen. I'm skeptical of this LinkedIn influencer. I just don't want to end up on LinkedIn lunatics like Sam. Sam is
what's LinkedIn lunatics? Is that like a show?
No, it's the subreddit where they post
I knew it was going to be some kind of Reddit thing.
Yeah, it's a
you
subreddit.
Are the world's biggest Reddit fan.
They post like the proposal, like someone posts like on LinkedIn, like, here's how B2B SaaS is like a marriage proposal. And then they go through like the 5 reasons. And
that Amazon guy that was wrote about his wife. Oh my God.
Yeah,
like, there's some wild.
I just think if you look at it, like the big companies, not all of them. Satya is not a presence. I don't know who he is as a person. I don't know who Sundar is as a person. But, Elon is a pretty public person. He's pretty out there. And, I just think that there's it's hard, because we talked about this in the past. One argument is you can't, if so much of the brand is tied up in the founder CEO and the cult of personality, which unfortunately is the way it is for Pavilion to a certain extent, is there real enterprise value? But then the counter argument is there enterprise value if it's not? Yeah. And maybe that's a competitive superpower that you just have to lean into. You just have to own it. That if you happen to have a founder CEO that's a great storyteller that can communicate well.
Founder mode. That's founder mode.
That's fun. I think like Steve Jobs, all these great companies, they had founders right at the top of the company in front of the world, talking, evangelizing. I think that part, we should never think of not doing something that can help the business grow efficiently and effectively, just because one day that might dink our enterprise value. You can always adjust it in a future date, but do the thing that's best for business performance in the short term. For me, I don't love social media. I had like a lot of followers on LinkedIn that I got at a time where you could cough on LinkedIn and get 1,000 followers. And so I very quickly got like 20, something like that, 25,000. But I've never been able to fall in love with being active over there. I like these mediums a lot. I love the podcast. I love the newsletter. I don't love social. But I do think that if I did, it'd be super helpful. It'd be great for the business if I fell in love with it. Maybe I need to try to fall in love with it and do it in a way that's authentic. I don't think it's necessary to show them all of your private life and all these things. I think it's just important to find a way to be compelling consistently. Scott Galloway, I think, does this really well. You don't know what his wife's name is. You don't know much about his personal life. You know a little bit, but then there are elements of his life he speaks very openly about. And he's on like 5 podcasts a week and he's very in your face. I think he has threaded the needle really well. And if I was to do more of it, that's probably the person I would take inspiration from. I think he's also such a beautiful writer. But I do think that this building in public is one of the tactics within it. And I don't have the energy to build in public like that. I think that's a real, it's an energy suck because there's a lot of trash that happens with it.
You can't opt out of it. I think once
you can't opt out of it. It's like now it's a commitment. I don't like committing to things like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it depends on your strategy. Like in Adam's case, again, I literally heard him talk about how the thesis isn't retention.com or RB2B. The thesis is build the audience and then figure out what you want to do with the audience and what you can sell them, which I think that's interesting.
By the way, the most ironic thing about this whole thing, and I hope he posted about it, is retention.com has 14% churn. Just like the name retention.com versus 14%. That's just kind of
I think RB2B is what he was talking about.
RB2B, yeah.
Our retention.com also has high churn. But again, he got it to 20 million.
Yeah,
without raising any money.
No, undeniable. No hate there. That is the most impressive thing that has probably happened in our B2B 2025 year. So, what did you start the year at?
No idea. I don't think it's grown much.
No. But the 20 million wasn't all RVP.
Last year was retention.com, and I think retention.com is the thing that got to 22 and then hit a wall. And then our B2B began this year and is already north of 2 million.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, you should have an audience if you want to do business. It's going to be helpful, but figure out your authentic way of doing it, I guess, is the message.
Yeah, I don't know. That's not a very compelling takeaway, sadly, Asad. I'm not interested.
And what is the takeaway here? Like, so
I'm not buying. Do make your most ridiculous post on LinkedIn so you can get
Take your shirt off. That's
LinkedIn.
the takeaway.
Be your unabashed mad self. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Shout out wins of the week.
Oh man.
AJ, why don't you go?
I am going to shout out a product that is near and dear to my heart. That's going to tell a little bit about my personality as well. It's the Big Green Egg. I smoked a 15-hour brisket over the weekend for my college friends, and it was
from there. Like,
what's that?
You said Big Green Egg, and then you said smoked, and I wasn't thinking this had anything to do with cooking.
We're teaching.
Is the grill, man, that you use to smoke meat. It's like famous. Zuck loves it.
Yeah. He has a famous viral video of that. Yeah. Actually, I'm surprised, Austin. I'm going to have to share that with you. But we were playing cornhole and smoking in the Big Green Egg, doing all the American things over the weekend. I learned to smoke brisket in Texas and pork shoulder. I've done ribs. I do fish, and the brisket was delicious. 15 out. The secret for anyone that smokes anything out there. If you have brisket that comes out dry, you ready for this?
Yes, ready.
Let it rest in a Yeti cooler. Asa, do you know what a Yeti is?
Yeah.
I think we taught you what a Yeti was, actually. We taught you what a Yeti was. Yeah. Let it rest for a minimum 4 hours. 4 hours.
Rest for 4 hours?
Rest in a Yeti cooler. Wrap it in towels. So it will come out in the butcher paper. And then you wrap it in towels. You put it in there and it will still be piping hot, but it will be so wet and moist is the word that they use. But to use now.
You seem a little self-conscious about that.
I hesitated to say it. That's my shout out win of the week.
That's good. I like it. I'll go next. You keep thinking. Yeah. I said this already, but it's interesting when you start to advise certain companies and then you actually begin to fall in love with their product. And this past week has been the week of Otter, because I just really am impressed with their functionality. And I think it really is interesting to watch companies that are hyper-focused on a specific use case continue to innovate. So, and by the way, there's like this virality where everybody in my company, all I did was forward one summary of an email to my executive team, and they're like, can I get it? Can I get it? Can I get it? So that is like the definite. And again, even just the way they format the recap emails, the problem with Zoom is that they do their transcription thing, and the subject of the email just Sam Jacobs cloud recording. And it's like, I don't even know what this was about. So anyway, check out Otter. I think they're doing some cool stuff. And I guess I'll give a shout out to Karen Cisneros. Karen is my executive assistant, and I'd stopped working with her for a little while, and everything fell apart, and we just started working together again.
Karen's back.
Karen is back.
Karen's back. I like Karen.
She's great, and I'm just excited for that added level of productivity. I'm really trying to figure out how to be more productive. Also, last shout out is to naps. New rule is anytime you're tired, just immediately go to sleep. Whether you're in mid-conversation, whether you got a little break in your day, you had a big sandwich for lunch, don't cancel the meeting. Go to sleep.
How much did Naps pay you for this?
Oh, Naps pays me.
The Association of Naps.
They just offer me equity. The NAP Association of America. The
Nap.ai? Is it Nap.ai or Nap.io?
It is not .ai. Awesome. Shout out or win of the week?
I don't even know if it's a win or a shout out. It's just something on my mind. I'll just share what I'm thinking about. So I'm super frustrated because I feel like I've said this to you guys, every 6 months I have to recalibrate how I work, how I deploy my time, because how I thought I should do it based on what type of endurance I had obviously was miscalculated. And I find myself feeling quite exhausted and run down. And it's not like physical tiredness, but you can see the quality of your ideas and your creativity isn't there. And it's very frustrating. And so every 6 months, I'm in this stage where I'm like redoing my calendar and figuring this out. It's just really annoying. The energy levels I had when I became CEO at 32 versus today, it's 4 years in, so different. And so it seems like endurance for work is this depreciating asset. and I need to figure this out. So
you take methyl B12?
I take a billion things, man. So my issue is, because I'm taking all these supplements, I work out, I sleep well now. I get multiple 90% nights, and I eat well. I'm fit. So it's like, I'm not going to get an uplift from doing those things. And so the one thing I'm thinking is, maybe it's like, as you get older, your testosterone drops like 1% every year past 30. And so maybe it's that. I'm doing some blood tests next week, but I'm just very frustrated with this. So I'm going to be working on this a lot to figure out how to not have to go through this annoying process every 6 months. And I'll just fill you guys in on what I figure out.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I get tired a lot too.
Yeah.
You know what's helpful for that? Naps.ai.
You know, one of the things is that I have ADD, but I don't take medication for it. But with an ADD brain, your brain takes in more information per minute than the average brain, not in a good way, in a bad way. And so your brain gets tired like very quickly. And so that's also an issue. But I've tried medication when I was younger, like here and then. You just lose your oomph. So that's not the solution. So yeah, problems. I'm going to start solving them. I'll let you guys know what I figure out.
All right. Well, before we go, folks, GTM 2024 in Austin, Texas, please make sure you join us there. It's really going to be great. I think the room block at the Fairmont is sold out. I could be wrong, but we're now on a roll, and it's going to be a great event. We're really excited for it. Kim Scott's going to be there. Benedict Evans is going to be there. A bunch of great people. AJ will be there. Asid will be there. Topline will be recorded there. It's going to be fun, and we might all go out on a boat with Adam Robinson. So
no, we're skydiving out of a plane to land on a boat. That's what I heard.
I mean, it's high risk, high reward. So I hope you'll join us. By the way, if you want to use my code, use the code Topline for 15% off your ticket. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you on Thursday for Topline Hotline.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.